Putin's red lines have been a cornerstone of Russian foreign policy for years. But as Russia faces mounting pressure from the international community, it's becoming increasingly clear that those red lines are little more than a myth. In today's video, we're going to explore just how irrelevant these red lines have become and what that means for Russia's place on the world stage.
We have artillery. Thank you. We have it. Is it enough? Honestly, not really. I assure you that Ukrainian soldiers can properly operate American tanks. Let the world see that the United States are here.
Vladimir Putin attempted to draw yet another one of his famous red lines on September the 12th, warning Western leaders that any decision to let Ukraine use long-range missiles on Russian territory would put NATO at war with Russia. This will mean that NATO countries, the United States, European countries are at war with Russia, he stated, before vowing to take appropriate decisions. You fucking dickhead. Few problems with that sausage. Starting with the territories that you occupy. Not fully occupy, by the way. Let's get that very fucking clear. Partially occupied. Can't control the whole thing, but yet you still class them as Russian and that they've always been Russian. Well, guess what weapons are being used there, sweetheart? Ukraine is already using the weapons in question to hit occupied regions that Putin considers Russian without provoking any escalation. Never mind war between Russia and NATO. Putin's comments came amid mounting speculation that Ukraine's partners are preparing to lift controversial restrictions on the use of long-range Western weapons that currently prevent strikes against military targets in the Russian Federation. The United States, Britain and France have all provided Ukraine with long-range missiles, but have so far blocked Kyiv from using them inside Russia. However, there are growing indications that Western leaders are now ready to rethink their stance and give Ukraine the green light.
Ukraine may receive permission to attack Russia with long-range Western weapons by the beginning of this winter. This was stated by the British Foreign Office. Foreign Secretary David Lammy stressed that Ukraine's position should be further strengthened in the coming weeks, thanks to its Western partners.
In fact, now is the moment, because we are moving from autumn to winter, when the West must show its courage and absolute commitment.
According to the Times sources, the United States and Britain are preparing to authorize Ukraine to use Western long-range weapons against targets deep inside Russia. However, the decision is likely to be kept secret to preserve the element of surprise. Ukraine is regularly bombarded by Russian cruise and ballistic missiles, which destroy its infrastructure and kill civilians. With the help of long-range Western weapons, Ukraine could hit strategic airfields and missile production facilities deep inside Russian territory and thus bring victory in the war closer.
By raising the prospects of World War III, Putin clearly hopes to intimidate the West and convince Ukraine's allies that it would be prudent to maintain the present ban on strikes inside Russia. At the same time, his attempts to portray the issue as a potential game changer are undermined by his own underwhelming response to Ukraine's routine use of Western-supplied long-range missiles in areas such as Crimea that Putin has long insisted are now part of Russia. If the idea of Ukrainian airstrikes on Russian territory really does represent a red line for Moscow, why did he not react to any of these earlier attacks? The evident inconsistency of Putin's position provides a hint of the realities behind his imperialistic posturing during the invasion of Ukraine. When he first embarked on the invasion 10 years ago, Putin began by pronouncing the annexation of Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula. In September 2022, he went even further, declaring that 4 partially occupied Ukrainian provinces were now part of the Russian Federation and would remain Russian forever. The Russian constitution was duly updated to include Ukraine's Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. Putin has since doubled down on these territorial claims. He has boasted publicly of his Ukrainian conquests and has compared his invasion to the imperial expansion of Russia under 18th century Tsar Peter the Great. In June 2024, Putin stated that in order to secure a ceasefire and begin peace talks, the Ukrainian military must completely withdraw from all 4 partially occupied provinces and hand them over to Russia. Meanwhile, Kremlin officials frequently claim that if Ukraine wishes to end the war, It must reconcile itself to new territorial realities created by the invasion. Oh, now, just let me interject here, because I've got a few new realities based on the territorial invasion that started on August the 6th. I don't know if you're aware, Pootler. You do know you're being invaded at the minute. Last week I was watching a British Challenger 2 tank rip about Kursk, you big muppet. And we all know, goes without saying, Mordor's unsecured communications, etc., etc. But Lord have mercy, even using carrier pigeon, surely the message could have got from Isengard to Mordor to the Kremlin by now. Stolyov here, who's definitely going through a Dr. Evil phase of his midlife crisis with his little outfits. Last week, he was calling for you to resign. Now, Stolyov, don't know if you'll ever see this, but if I was you, sir, I'd consider investing in a bungalow, because those Russian windows, they're dangerous things. Even at 30,000 feet, you can still fall out of them. Ask Prigozhin.
Шойгу! Герасимов!
Judging by Putin's latest red line, it would appear that he has not also yet fully adjusted to the new territorial realities championed by his own propaganda. While Putin publicly insists that 5 unilaterally annexed regions of Ukraine have all been officially incorporated into the Russian Federation, he is evidently in no hurry to offer them the same level of protection afforded to other Russian regions. This reluctance detracts from his efforts to portray the occupation of Ukrainian lands as irreversible, and serves as a tacit acknowledgement that in Putin's new empire, some regions are more Mordor than others. This is not the first time Mordor has warned of impending war with NATO, of course. On the contrary, Kremlin officials and Russian propagandists regularly depict the invasion of Ukraine as a war against the West, and often claim to be fighting NATO. Nor is it unusual for Putin's red lines to be revealed as suspiciously flexible. Since the very first day of the invasion, the Russian dictator has frequently tried to impose arbitrary limits on the Ukrainian military and the country's Western allies, only to take no action when these red lines are subsequently crossed. Since February 2022, Ukraine's partners have debunked red line after red line as they have expanded their military aid to Kyiv, from helmets and handheld anti-tank weapons to Patriot air defense systems, long-range missiles and F-16 fighter jets. Ukraine has repeatedly called Putin's bluff by liberating occupied regions claimed by the Kremlin and disabling or sinking around 1/3 of the entire Russian Black Sea Fleet. In August 2024, the Ukrainian army crossed the reddest of all red lines by invading Russia itself, rather than making good on his many threats. Putin responded by downplaying Ukraine's invasion and portraying the first occupation of Russian land since World War II as a mere provocation. Got no balls. It should now be obvious that Putin's red lines are just a bluff intended to scare the West and isolate Ukraine. Over the past 2.5 years, his efforts to impose restrictions on his international adversaries have been repeatedly exposed and have grown increasingly detached from the realities of the war. We have now reached the point where Putin's latest red lines directly contradict his own propaganda. The Russian ruler's reliance on empty threats underscores the relative weakness of his position. If Western leaders can finally overcome their fear of escalation, they will find that Putin is far less formidable than he would like us to believe. There, guys, I'll leave it for today. Just a quick one. Russian Way of War is upcoming. Should be out Tuesday. As always, thank you all for watching. Slava Ukraini. Herium Slava.
Готовность! Давайте, парни! Места! Уезжай на эвакуацию, дальше, продолжай.